Rise, minions, and welcome to unMadeGaming. We are here. We are back for our Patreon campaign called The Rise. This is episode 27, if you can believe it, The Felling. If you guys like what we do here and you want to support the channel, the best way to do that is just like these fine folks over on our Patreon. Link for that in the description down below. While you're down there, click on that Discord link. Join us in the Discord. Be a part of the community. Be a part of the conversation. And as always, in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you will see the corruption bar. That bar serves two purposes. One is when that bar fills, I unleash terrible things like killing the love of your life. And two, every single dollar that goes back, it goes into that bar, goes back to this channel to do cool things like art and hire people to do some work and editors and make podcasts and, you know, keep my lights on. So if you want to do that, please by all means hit that donation button in the description below, or the tip button rather. That being said, previously on The Rise. As rain pelted the city, lightning struck like hammer blows, laying waste to several buildings and sending the citizens running and screaming in peril. Quickly assessing the sound of danger and assuming that somehow the war sprang up far earlier and from within the city, our band of godlings raced to the scene. Waiting for them was none other than Rhea Han, Mina's twin sister. Enraged and bent on vengeance, Rhea launched an all-out assault on Mina and Antares that ultimately resulted in the loss of Wexy Jund. Get your tears out now. It has been a week since the loss of Wexy Jund. As one of her generals, the queen held service for her with full honors, and she was buried on the same hill as her father. Zamora has been tense with the official announcement of a new god, a patron of the city no less, then in the immediate assault on the city, and now a pending war. Reconstruction has begun in earnest on the buildings that were destroyed, but all other city resources have been redirected to the war effort. Seydlitz. We'll start with you. In the days after the rain, you've been inside the city. You've contacted the Hunters Guild as per your conversation with the Queen, and they are about to set march for hunt, game, etc., to help stave off hunger in the city should there be a siege. But in the days leading up to that, what have you been doing in the city?
Seydlitz probably would be going around getting supplies. Probably would have asked the queen to help him fund it so he could go hunt as well, because he is a hunter.
Okay. Fairly easy. You are one of the generals. All expenses are paid, as you offered to lend your expertise to aiding the city and your family as well. Any resources you require have been either procured for you, have been taken from the royal coffers, or coin has exchanged hands in some capacity. This is probably the most prepared for a hunt you've ever been, because you could spare no expense.
Probably one of the most amusing things he's procured was a wolf dog that helped him hunt.
Perfect.
As I remember that XP from last time.
Yes, yeah. You have procured a hunting hound, all gear necessary to assist you on this hunt. What else have you been doing inside the city? Have you talked to anyone? Have you spoken to your family?
Seydlitz probably would be talking more to his mother and sister, telling them, like, just trying to keep their spirits up.
Okay. Perfect.
Still debating on his internal ideas, like, should I tell them about Amy or not?
Interesting.
He's
Okay.
still on the fence about that.
Interesting. As the days drag on during this week, your family is tense. They understand what you've told them, they understand what is to come, and they understand their choices to stay. They are doing their best to keep business as usual and make it seem as though nothing is wrong. But with a practiced eye, you can tell when your mother descends from her room or comes back from the shop that her eyes ring red. The kids don't seem to understand, and you can see that your sister has a hard time explaining things to them. And your brother in law just seems constant on edge. You can tell that he was in the let's get out of here camp, but is doing as he is told, more or less. The days drag on, and finally, it's time for the hunt. The Hunters Guild all depart in their various teams in various directions, most of which head north, northwest, northeast into the Verge and the RuneScape, staying as far away from the dark shadow of Nod as they possibly can. Your path, however, leads you to the southwest, in little copse of a forest that you know very well, one that you've hunted before, one that you know its many pathways and what treacheries lie within, but is also firmly underneath the shadow of Nod's ever watchful eye. The forest seems to stretch on in all directions. Dense canopy above, thick overgrowth below, shadows move and leap between trees, insects and flying birds and beasts flit about from branch to branch, while the forest floor seems to be alive with critters and smaller ground dwellers. The forest was alive in ways that the city could never be, and Seydlitz, you almost feel more at home here. Moving with practiced ease, you wend your way through the forest searching for game, first to take care of your family, but second to help ensure the survival of Samora, should there be a siege. Seydlitz, what does it look like when you are fully in your element? This is the first time you've been on a hunt since you met this group of friends.
To any outside watcher, Seydlitz would go from, kind of older guy, big, you kind of know he's there, to almost as if he disappears, as if his presence just dies. And it is just like, you can, basically, it's like complete quiet. And for him, that's how it is. He's so intently focused. He's listening to every little tree branch, every little rustle of leaves, every little minute detail he can hear, trying to find what he's hunting for.
We see Seydlitz enter the forest and find a natural blind as he crouches below with his crossbow at the ready. You see like his hand sort of cast down into the dirt beside him, and it's almost as though Seydlitz, you can feel the vibration. You can feel the life of the forest around you. As you hear and you kind of cock your head almost the way a bird does to listen to those vibrations. And you can feel a mouse tittering through the underbrush, climbing a mushroom. You can hear a swarm, a murmuration of birds sort of flitting about in the high branches of the canopy. You can hear a hart gallop, 40 or so paces away, a brook coming down from the krakens. You are as one with the forest as you can be. It's almost as if you are part of it. And with that same practiced ease, you see the first food-sized creature sort of cross your path. You see a large, six-legged, purple and green lizard just sort of through the undergrowth. It's maybe a foot high off the ground. Its belly sort of drags, leaving an almost slug-like trail as you see it sort of waddle back and forth, headed in the direction of the stream you know of. And your bolt looses from the crossbow, finds its purchase, and with a this creature sort of hits the ground. Its six legs splay out underneath it. And you've gotten your first kill. And with that, we cut back to the city. Mina, It's been a few days since you marched the funeral dirge of your friend, your employer, your master, your love. The war is still coming. Your divinity is still pending. The threat of Nod, the threat of the dragon, the threat of your sister still loom on the horizon, as does whatever cryptic knowledge she left you with, that everyone you know and love from the city of Dawnsfall or the town of Dawnsfall are dead. What have you been doing?
Mina was originally convalescing in Wexy's quarters. And as soon as he felt up to it, he left those quarters for whoever's taking over the guard company so they can move in. And he's been spending a lot of time in the training yard, just training as much as he can, getting ready for the war.
The company has been in disarray, as you would imagine. As you make your way out of those quarters and begin to do your best to regain your strength, new shield in hand, the members of the guard caravan, the employees of Wexy Jund and the Jund family, begin to go through and figure out what is to happen next. Wexy was the last in line. She had no siblings and she, mothered no children of her own. So there is no one left to carry on the name. As her employees, fellow guard members, rifle through paperwork, administrative, financial books, planning for the war effort, planning for getting caravans out of the city to Tunabar hold fast rather. A few days go by into your training. There's a strange air in the tilt yard. You remember the queen saying that you were sort of a hero of the people, that the guards respected you. And that respect hasn't diminished, but there is a strange trepidation in the yard. The guards aren't making as much idle chit chat with you. The soldiers aren't stopping as much. They will salute you. They do nod in greeting, but there's far less conversation here. And whether you welcome that or not, or whether you dig into that or not, there is an air of something off. Whether it's your grief or their fear of the pending war or some combination of all of the above, there's a tense atmosphere that just sort of follows you around like a rain cloud. One of the guards from the caravan come up to you. She's probably in her early 20s, a little bit older than you maybe. Tall, maybe 6 foot tall, lithe, carries a spear. She walks over to you, and you can see that out of the corner of your eye as you're practicing with your spear and getting used to the weight of this new shield, you can see out of your periphery that she is there sort of almost working up the courage to come talk to you. She stands with her spear slung in its holster on her back, and you can see that every once in a while she sort of rocks forward as if trying to push herself into coming to speak to you. Do you do anything, Mina, or do you continue training?
Mina will take a final stab of the spear into the training dummy that he's training against. Just put all his effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then just leave the spear embedded and then just turn and nod to her.
She watches on as the metal spearhead goes through the dummy, and you bury this thing past the wooden tip of the spear. As you turn and nod to her, she sort of swallows whatever she was choking on, and steps forward. Uh, you see that she pulls from like a side satchel that's like tight up against her ribs. She slides it forward, and pulls out a tattered, dirty, leather bound book. You can see that the pages sort of fray into like almost a Y shape if you hold it by the spine. Something that would probably drive Korax insane. But she pulls it towards you, or she pulls it towards herself rather, as she walks towards you, and she says, uh, "Sir, uh, we found going through, um, we were going through everything, um, and we found this among her belongings. Um, uh, I guess just here." And she thumbs through, like she places her thumb in the spine and sort of opens up to the last page. Um, and you see, plain as day, in Wexy's handwriting, a date that marks uh, the day she passed. Um, this was probably written either in the hours before or after the meeting with the queen. Um, you see in her own handwriting what must be her journal, and the final entry just says, "Should I fall in battle during the war, the company is left to the Hans."
Mina just looks at the guard and says, that can't be right. She must have had other succession plans for officers in the ranks, family members.
Uh, Sir, from what I understand, she didn't have any family left. Um, and um, even the officers in the ranks were, they didn't, there was no succession plan. Um, I'm not, usually she was fairly thoughtful in forward planning, but I'm not sure, sir. Um, I know that your mother was, you're the only Han I have available to give this to.
Um, uh, thanks, I guess.
Um,
Um, so what do I do now?
um, we'll, we were kind of hoping you would tell us.
Right, of course.
The rest of the guard
Um,
have we've been assembled at the barracks. Uh, they're they're just awaiting your orders.
of course. Mina takes the book from her and says, I guess we should. I mean, yeah. Um, form everyone up. Uh, I need to talk to them.
Understood, sir. And you see her turn on her heel, and she begins to sprint back in the direction that you know is the barracks. She quickly is she is absolutely trying to get there before you, to make sure things are ready when you arrive. As she sprints off, what are you doing as the sort of dust cloud settles?
Mina will look through the book
uh, ahead of the note, hoping that there's something to indicate this is not true.
You thumb through this journal, and I imagine this feels every page turn, your stomach sort of flops, right? Um, this feels like an invasion of privacy. You can see that this was not like an officer's journal about like tactics. This is a personal journal found in her quarters. You essentially have her diary. And as you flip a few every page you flip in reverse, like going earlier and earlier in the month, it becomes more and more clear about what you have in your hands. So how far you read back, I will leave to you and your
Yeah.
soft sensibilities. But in the
Mina,
first like 5 pages, there is no indication that this is a joke, another succession plan exists, or anything of that kind.
yeah, as Mina comes to the realization of what it is, he'll quickly stop reading it, and kind of hold it too tight so that as if he can stop what's in there coming out. Turn and pull his spear from the dummy. Kind of find maybe find a water barrel somewhere where he can wash some of the sweat off, straighten himself up, and head towards the barracks.
Okay. You head off into the city, and you wend your way through alleyways and pathways back towards the barracks. And as you get to this building, you see the signpost creaking above you about the caravan guard. You can see through the windows that the guards have formed into ranks inside the building. And as you muster whatever you need to muster, you place your hand on the handle, you depress the lever, and you wrench the door open. And we see a rope just hand over hand as we see Seydlitz pulling up a fresh kill, a rope tied around it over a branch as he secures this thing higher in the canopy so no other ground creatures can nibble at what he has caught. We see hanging in the canopy this six-legged lizard. We see a fresh deer. We see this strange two-headed bird of some kind, seemingly like almost like an ostrich. In its looks, thin skin-covered legs, two heads, sharp beaks, as they are pulled up to the tree line, away from animals. Seydlitz, you are in your element. You could stay here and just pass the time until the war is over. This is where you truly want to be. You have more than enough food for your family. Now it falls to how much food you want to secure for the city. As you wrench these kills up into the tree to keep them from predators, what are you doing, Seydlitz? What are you thinking about? What's going through your head?
Seydlitz' inner monologue, he's thinking over divinity while he's doing all this,
Mm.
wondering to himself, is it really worth chasing, or how could someone who's reluctant to even become a god even do so? And these thoughts are kind of interrupted as he's counting his bolts because he's probably going to keep hunting until he runs out.
Okay. Okay. These thoughts sort of almost cloud your mind. The hunting almost takes like a mental backseat in that your body is so practiced at the hunt that you have such clarity of mind that you can think about and focus on these thoughts of what does it mean to be divine, what is divinity, What about Amy? What about your new allies? What about Rhea? All these thoughts of this divinity, of this new rise of gods, Vishaden, the dragon, people that you have somehow drawn the ire of without ever intending to, the child Arua being thrust upon you and your allies, the adherents. These are all things you never asked for, all things you never looked for, and sort of things that you unwittingly and unwillingly stumbled into and have now been forced to deal with. All the while, your body goes through the motions of hunting with practiced expertise as you wander deeper and deeper into the forest. You mark mentally where your first set of kills are so that way you can come back to them and drag them all with the wagon you have procured as your wolf pup, probably only a few months of age, sort of scampers about underneath your feet, snapping up at the hanging game. Not quite trained in the ways of a hunting dog as of yet, but he's getting there. He's understanding. As you watch him sort of play in the forest, you are reminded of your niece and nephew. Completely innocent in all of this, unwitting of the world around them, unable to understand what is to happen in the next few days or weeks or who knows how long, especially Amy, as she is faced with the same choice you'll be faced with. You go deeper and deeper into the forest. The canopy grows thicker and darker, and you enter that separation between where the line of Nod crosses into the runescape, and you are plunged into darkness. There's no light, either through the canopy or because of the Eye of Nod just sort of hanging over. This is the dark part of the forest, and you know that there are things here that ought not be disturbed, but there's also good game here because of that. What are you doing as you enter into this more forbidden part of the forest?
I wonder what can be found here.
Roll me. It's going to be an intelligence. Let's have our first roll of the day. It's going to be intelligence, tracking, hunting, animal, whatever skills you have in that skill set.
I guess I have following identifying tracks.
Yeah, we'll take that. So roll me that skill.
Just a
And
straight roll, or is there a difficulty to it?
it's going to be a difficulty 4. Easy. You enter this part of the forest, and one of your senses is essentially eliminated. You're now existing on the smell, the sound, the vibrations of the forest to sort of guide you here. Unless you want to light a torch, which you know would give away your position. You quickly count your bolts, and you sort of get down low again and feel the presence of the ground, and you feel a game trail about 10 feet away from you that winds deeper into the forest. And you know that if you follow this game trail, you'll find something. You also feel, in the opposite direction, there's something large. You can't tell if there is a sense of malice in whatever this large creature is, but you know it's bigger than anything you've caught thus far in this trip. Which direction do you head?
The larger it is, the more it provides, but the harder it falls. But time is of the essence. So large we go.
Okay. You head off into the east, towards whatever this large presence is. And we cut back to the city. And Teres, you have seen death and destruction in your life. A considerable amount in general. Enough by your own hand and even more by others. This is the first time, well, maybe the second time, that it has affected you on a personal level. Whether you've admitted it to anyone, whether you've spoken the words loud or only in your head, you watched someone you respect die. And there was nothing you could do to change that. It has been several days since Wexy's funeral procession. You have seen Mina recover from the violent altercation with his sister. Most, if not all, of his wounds have closed, and he has begun training, whether against the will of Medicum or not, he has hit the training yard. But he is a different person. And Teres, what have you been doing in the days since the funeral?
She's been keeping to herself quite a bit, I think. She doesn't really know how to deal with the emotions that she's feeling. She probably doesn't even know that she's feeling grief right now. So she's been acting out in the way that she knows. While Mina was in recovery and in bed rest, she found, just by happenstance, a friendly fighting ring in a basement of a warehouse in Samora, where a bunch of people gather, they place bets, and they just fisticuffs each other and see who can win. And so for the past few days, that's what she's been doing to let off steam. Winning, losing, and maybe beating a few people up a little too much, but also maybe allowing herself to get beat up a little too much. And yeah, so if anyone sees her, she's walking around with like a split lip, maybe a black eye, some bruised and cut knuckles. And if she's not doing that, she is holed up in her room in the inn. And she has a scar where her dragon tattoo used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Question. This is a little above the table here. The scar. It's a big tattoo, right?
Yeah, it was like
it's like a sleeve.
Yeah, maybe like elbow
sleeve.
to shoulder,
Yeah.
and now it's just a huge gnarly scar.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a rumbling in the parts of Samara that maybe well-respected folk don't travel in. Maybe someone like Mina would be too above board. But someone like Korax would know about, but not go to. There's a rumbling about a ferocious warrior. Or warrioress, depending on how you want to phrase that. Somebody who has taken the underground fight rings by storm. A new contender, not from Zamora, not heard of in any of the other fighting pits that exist between here and Corso. A relative unknown. Someone who has drawn the attention of the queen and still wants to mire in the muck with the lowborn. This scarred warrioress has a few W's and L's under their belt. And every time you return to the fighting pits, Antares, you are welcomed with open arms. You are revered, celebrated as a potential champion. You are treated with, it's hard to say kindness, but it at least masks for kindness. People are excited to see you. People are excited to see what happens when you fight.
They're like posturing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not the same kind of welcome you feel with your friends, but it's also a different kind of welcome you felt with your mother. At the same time, there is a growing concern in the back of your mind that these people are excited to see you, that they are chanting your name because of your ability to commit violence. A thing you used to be feared for, you are now revered for. What you do in the ring is something they keep coming to see. Whether you are raining blows or taking them, either way, the show is entertaining. The violence committed against you or committed by you is what they want to see. It's why they chant your name. It's why money exchanges hands between them and between you. It's why a growing population of the city knows your name. Not your past, but your name. When you're not in the ring and you're alone with your thoughts to contend with your own past, your recent allies, your recent decisions, your new form of employment, where does your mind go?
I think she stews quite a bit. There's probably been knocks on her door that she has ignored. And maybe a certain barkeep trying to get her attention when she comes and goes and she ignores him. Because she has completely trashed her room. Every table, every chair, her bed, the pillows are shredded. And she sits cross-legged on the floor. And she just stews on what happened. She sees Rastaban's face, she sees Eltanen's face, and now she's seeing Rhea's face. And she sees Mina and Wexy lying in the rain. And then you hear like a crunch of something, and then a piece of wood that she had been grinding in her hands has like cracked. And she feels like she's seeing red right now. You're muted.
I sure am. And Terry, this is the first time you've had to deal with really any emotions. Not that you don't have them, but you just didn't have to deal with them before.
Mm-hmm.
You could drown them out with exactly what you're trying to do. You could focus on the next mission. You could find any sort of vice or lack of virtue in Corso to take the pain away, to numb whatever doubt you may have, as well as the honey-tinged words of poison that your mother would whisper in your ear to garner encouragement from you. This is the first time you've been on your own. This is the first time you've had to deal with grief, with sadness, with sorrow, with pain, and you have nothing to numb it other than some cheap fire whiskey and a punch in the face. That's really all you have going for you.
Yep.
You can see it on the faces of Mina and Korax and Seydlitz that they are all dealing with something in their own way, and for whatever reason, no one seems to be talking about it. And perhaps that's how things are for normal people. They don't talk about it. This is your first time. You have no idea, in essence. And as you meditate on this and think about what this means, perhaps what you could have done differently. Is there something you could have done differently? Is there another way this played out? Could you have been faster? Could you have been stronger? Is this in any way your fault? Is this a failing on Mina? Is this a failing on Korax? Is this a failing on someone other than you? That sort of meditative, almost runner's high takes over, and that starts to numb things a little bit. And as you can hear all these thoughts just sort of swirling and swirling in your head, they blend in with the sound of the crowd cheering around you. And before you even noticed it, you were back in the ring. And you hear the bing of the bell ring off. And as you sort of shake off these cobwebs, shake off these thoughts and doubts and pain and anguish, and sort of square your shoulders and limber yourself up, you see the other person across from you. You see the wooden beams stacked 10 or so feet high, putting you in a hole with your combatant. The people around you are all swilling beer around and cheering and exchanging of chits and notes pass hand to hand. And you see 10 feet away from you this short man. He is 5 feet tall, but he is built like a stone house. He is almost as wide as he is tall. His muscles have muscles, and you see him shake one arm out, and you can almost see them ripple out as he shakes the other ones out. And you see this man run towards you. And as he starts to pummel blows towards you, we cut back to the forest, where Seydlitz, you are traveling down this dark path, if you can call it a path. Nothing you can see. You are traveling as quietly, as still and motionless as you can possibly move towards some large presence deep in the forest. You sense nothing about this. You sense no good intention, no malice, no nothing other than its size. And as you quietly move through the forest, slipping between branches, avoiding pitfalls and branches that may startle this creature away, you eventually get to a clearing. You can see through a break in the denseness of the canopy the red light of the moon sort of shining down through the clouds. And you see, cast in an eerie glow in this clearing, there is some sort of hulking beast. You can see its back towards you. You're fairly certain that it's its back. It is squatted down on its legs, its ass on the ground, but its legs crouched. And you can see that it is hunched over. Its hunched form is easily 7 feet tall. You think that if this thing stood to its full height, it may be close to 9 feet tall, maybe 10 feet tall. And it's a good 5 or 6 feet wide. This thing is a brute of a creature. And from this distance and this darkness, you're not entirely sure what this thing is. You can tell that it is covered in hair. It does have, from what you can see of it now, it does have sort of like ursine features, like it may be some sort of bear, but you've never seen a bear rise to this size. You have the drop on this thing. It has not heard you, at least has not given any sort of indication that it's heard you or that it senses you. You do hear a quiet snuffling coming from it, like as it seems to be doing something, looking in the different direction.
Seydlitz would probably kind of start doing a half circle around to get a little bit closer so he can get a shot from either the side or get near the front. Because it's easier for a kill shot from those angles in the back.
Mm-hmm. You do so. You can quietly move around the clearing. You get to probably about halfway around the circle where you can see the side profile of this thing. It is ursine. It is very much like a bear, but you see that this thing, as I said, it is squatted down like the way a human would squat. And you can see, though it has huge fur-covered arms, its limb ends in a hand, not a clawed paw like a bear. It does have claws, don't get me wrong. They're about 4 or 5 inches talons, but it has hands and articulated thumbs. As you can see that this thing has some sort of equine beast. You're not entirely sure what this thing is, but it definitely looks like a horse or a deer of some kind. Also rather large. You move a few more feet and you can tell that this is a stag. This is a stag. You can see that there has like 20 or so points on this thing. It's a massive buck. And you can see that this beast is cracking the bones on it. Not quite like an animal would just rip into. It is precisely removing the bones, and you see it placing things off to the side. You hear that sickening crunch and crack of bones, and you hear that ripping and squelching of flesh as you see this thing essentially butchering a kill the way that you would clean any of the things you've killed. Obviously without tools, or at least without fine tools like a knife, like you might have. And you see as you round the corner of this thing's face. Again, it does look sort of ursine, but it is longer, almost lupine in nature, right? Almost like a wolf. It extends, like a snout extends much further than a bear's would, and you can see that that's the only place on this thing where the large fur covering isn't. It stops right around the outside of where like your face would be, and it is a snout that you see looks like bone. You see 2 red glowing eyes, and you see that the jaws are dripping with blood, obviously from this fresh kill. As you see it moving and looking at all the different parts as it snaps another bone, you see it remove this organ out to the side. You see it splinch open the thigh of this stag as it is dismembering this thing. Again, it seems to not notice you, seems to not even care of your presence. What are you doing?
Seydlitz is kind of puzzled. He's never observed a creature of this kind before, and he is kind of surprised at the amount of intelligence it's showing.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to pay any mind to you, whether it's noticed you or not. Are you observing this thing?
I think Seydlitz would be hesitant to kill it.
Okay. What do you do instead? Do you slink off into another area of the forest, or do you...
I think I would observe for a little bit and then basically probably backtrack.
Okay. Roll me and identifying and assessing danger. Let's call it a 6. Okay. You spend a few moments to observe this creature, one you've never seen before, whether it's native to this forest or if it's the only one or if it's the only one in existence, you're not entirely sure, but you sit there in your stillness and observe this creature sort of in command of its element. You begin to see in this dim, strange red light that this, what you've stumbled into, is essentially this thing's lair. And you see that the pseudo intelligence that you were getting from its precision in taking apart this animal, you see it in other places. There are effigies in bone hanging from the trees, as if this thing has the deft nature of its fingers and claws to actually create some sort of bone wind chime almost and hang them from the boughs of trees. This place is its lair. You see that on the opposite side, if you had to continued another 20 or 30 feet around this clearing, you would have seen a not quite a hut in that sense, but there is definitely a mound, a pile of furs and leathers that this thing has created almost a bed for itself to sleep upon. This creature, in your hesitance to kill it, you see that it does actually have a fair amount of intelligence. Perhaps not enough to be reasoned with or to be spoken to, but it does seem to have some sort of greater understanding of the world in a way that you were not expecting to find in this forest. It seems as though you are not the only hunter here. And as that sort of sinks in, you're able to slowly retreat back into the other side of the forest. Where do you go?
Seydlitz is going to follow the other end of that trail if he can re-find it,
Sure.
with a newfound respect for some of the creatures in these woods.
Absolutely. You head back towards the point in which you found the game trail. And we cut across the city again to find Korax. Korax, it has been several days since the funeral procession of Wexijund. Someone who, whether true or not, you quite literally led to their death. Mina.
On purpose.
Mina has been physically recovering. He took a break from that to attend the funeral procession and carry, as act as a pallbearer, essentially. What you have seen of Antares has been little or non-existent at all. And if you have seen her, she is fresh with bruises and cuts and butterfly stitches. Mina has recovered. He has taken to the yard, probably against Medicum's wishes. And the library holds no solace or relief for you, Korax. What have you been doing in the days after the procession?
Korax has been avoiding everyone, especially Mina. If he sees Mina walking down a street, Korax will take a side road, doing his best not to sort of encounter him. He would spend a lot of his time in the library, but would also be doing his best to try and sneak Arua out of her classes and out into the gardens to try and help her with any books he can find on magic to try and help her get a better grasp of it.
You quickly learn, now that you know where Arua is, what she's been doing, you quickly learn when her classes are and when are the appropriate the most appropriate times to either excuse her early or catch her between classes or catch her between leaving her quarters and heading to class, or vice versa, leaving from class to her quarters. Um, are you only sneaking her books, or are you trying to act as a teacher?
He is trying to act as a teacher. He is taking the books with him, and sort of, in effect, his goal is to try and teach her to make things grow really quick. He knew that she could grow grass with rubbing her feet on the floor like a carpet. But he wants to try and teach her a way to protect herself with that ability.
Okay. My question for you, how do you do that?
In the very Korax way.
Yes.
So magic is not unheard of, but being a god is. But I imagine there'd be books on how magic works or anything that he could use to try and encourage her. But for the most part, it's going to be him saying, okay, make this plant grow. Just make it grow really fast. Fill the room. In effect, he's trying to get but he's, rather than before she grew grass, he wants her to learn how to grow thorns, something that she can surround herself with. So she could fill a room with thorns and give herself a space. After seeing Rhea and what she did, he doesn't want to leave Arua unprotected.
You spend the first day or so procuring books and giving her what is essentially God homework. It is the more PG version of get your shit together, for the more child appropriate version of that phrase. And you see that the topic sparks her interest. As excited as she was to show you and to show her friends that she could make things grow, the possibility of doing more is exciting, right? The possibility of having powers that other kids don't have is exciting. It's a new fun thing. It's a new fun toy. It's new. The second day, you begin to instruct her as best you can, having never really been instructed yourself. You were sent for reasons out of Dawnsfall to join Telbin on his caravan to perhaps learn. And that was more of a learn by watching. Watch as I do as I do. You'll figure it out. There was no instruction from Telbin. You just saw what he did and had to replicate it. There were plenty of books to read, which you have supplied, and you can show her what you can do, which doesn't help her at all. And you can try to focus her into a single train of thought of grow, expand, that kind of thing. And the growing of plants comes easy. The creation of green comes easy. Plants spill out of pots, vines take root and climb up walls, creeping garden ivy sort of fills different parts, and just as fast as she can grow it, she can almost retract it. You see, the other parts are what come harder. The thorns, the entropy comes harder. She can grow plants, and you know that within her somewhere is the ability to grow Venus flytraps, man-eating plants, thorns, brambles, poisons, and the ability to withdraw life from those plants. You know that because you know how nature works. You know how magic works. You know how the push and pull of the arcane works. She does not. She doesn't understand what she needs to do to make that happen. Korax, roll me a difficulty 8. Intelligence roll. Knowledge of godly beings.
Is this a learning thing for Korax, or is this a learning thing for Arua?
Both.
So would eager to learn count on that? You're trained in any task that involves learning something new when digging through old books to find lore. I'm assuming no, actually. No,
Yeah,
it does make sense.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take that.
All right. It was a difficulty 8, you
Difficulty
said?
8.
That's going to drop it to a 7. Two efforts.
And knowledge of godly beings applies here as well.
Success. That
Cool.
was the 3 divine shifts, 2 efforts,
Yeah,
knowledge of godly beings, and eager to learn.
great. Outstanding.
Oh, took it down to
You,
1.
yeah. You. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a that's a that's a
Hold
minus
on,
7.
you said difficulty 8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He rolled at
So-
a 6.
Yes, because eager to learn drops it
Oh.
by 1. And dropping it again with one of the divine shifts because you can't add.
Yeah, you can
Oh,
only
that's
add
not
so
how
many
that
so many
works.
bonuses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So through your own divine source of knowledge, through the limited but still vast source of the library, through your own experiences and through a handful of assumptions, you realize that your powers as a god are intrinsically tied to who you are as a person and intrinsically tied to your control or lack thereof of your emotions. And for Arua, creation is as easy as imagination. Entropy and danger and violence and defense, sort of 2 sides of a coin, those don't come easy. Because she is not equipped with the emotions that she needs to harness to make those. She's not used to anger. She's not quite used to sadness or pain. She's not used to needing to defend herself. She's never had a bully. She's never had someone push her down in the playground, as it were. She's had no one to teach her these feelings. Everyone here in the castle is very nice to her. Everyone here in the castle is very nice to each other. They're all well taken care of. Some of these children are the children of the staff here, but some of the children here are the children of nobles. Everyone here is on an equal footing because they're under the watchful eye of the queen. You think unless she learns these feelings, these emotions, these truths in life, she will not be able to create what she needs to defend herself. Except in those rare moments where adrenaline takes over, fear takes over, and that fight or flight instinct is there, and defense comes naturally. You are at a crossroad, Korax. And in this crossroad, you are taken back to a conversation. Conversation which seems years away. But in truth has only been a few months. Conversation about the child. And how she would grow up. And how she could be a tool for evil or a tool for good. And it all coming down to her upbringing. What she was taught, by whom she was taught, and for what reasons she was taught. And as you recall this conversation, you stand at this crossroad, you know you could be the one that teaches her about fear and pain and anger, and all the emotions she needs to create tools of violence that would ultimately protect her, but could also be the first steps down a dark path. With your friends not around, there is no mad seraph on one shoulder and no good seraph on the other shoulder to point you in directions. You are left to make this choice alone. As her only teacher currently, what do you do?
Borax has thought a lot about how Arua needed to be not necessarily protected, but kept away from evil. He would not try and push her down that path. His training would, once he realizes that she doesn't know about protecting and about the dangers, it would simply be a case of sitting down with her and saying, look, if you don't know who's asking you to leave, then just put a tree in the door. Just grow a tree. Just don't need to hurt people. You just need to not leave. Stay safe. Stay with your mum. If your mum doesn't want you to leave, you stay with her. But he would not become her bully and push her down. Probably because she would kill him. Before Antares and Mina do.
Okay. You find a new angle, an out-of-the-box way of thinking to get around the fact that this kid doesn't know of the darkness in the world. And you teach her that not all defense comes from a point of aggression, and that sometimes even just putting up a roadblock is enough. And we cut back to the forest as we see Seydlitz vault over a fallen tree, moving deeper and deeper into the forest. You follow this game trail. You begin to hear a sort of rustling in the forest. First, a quick little scamper, and then another. And you're not sure if it is one creature just sort of moving very quickly. And as you follow this path, you hear it more and more frequently. You hear it louder. Your wolf pup is beside you. You can feel it bristling against your right leg as it sort of not quite cowers, but definitely pulls itself closer to you. It can't see here, at least not as well as you can. And it's new. It's new. This is a new job for him. You proceed down the game trail, and soon you realize that there are probably a dozen or so small scampering creatures. You'd guess probably about the same size as your wolf pup. Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller. It's hard to tell how big each individual one is. But they seem to be running around you. The atmosphere down this game trail is almost the complete opposite of what you encountered to the east. As you travel further and further to the west, there is almost a lightness here. Though there is no light from the canopy above, there's almost like a playful atmosphere. You hear these dozen or so creatures start to chitter back and forth like a as they run around in circles, almost laughing, it sounds like. And you find yourself coming to an area where there is a source of light in the distance. There's like a golden, almost firelight coming from a good 40 or so paces away through some trees. You can see this golden glow sort of happening here. Almost like someone has a, not quite a small hidden campfire, but not quite a bonfire. Like, you know, a normal size fire. You don't hear any talking. You don't hear any crackling of a fire. You don't smell the cooking of meat. You still hear the scampering of these tiny woodland creatures, and you still hear the calls back and forth that sound almost like laughing. What are you doing, Seydlitz?
Seydlitz is probably ignoring the small game because he's not here for them anyway. And he's probably gonna keep following the trail. Does it lead towards that firelight?
Unless it takes a sharp turn in some direction, your best guess from where you are is that yes, it does.
And he's gonna walk slowly towards this light.
Okay. Your pup stands next to you. You walk towards this. You hear the chittering laughter of these creatures around you, and you begin to sort of concentrate and drown out that laughter. These are not the creatures you're looking for. They sort of blend into the background, and you begin to hear the bubbling brook. A brook that is a stream coming down the mountain of the Krakens, a cool stream you know that would cause animals to come here. This is why the game trail exists. This is where they were coming. And you can see that it is in the same, that sound, you can hear that sound is in the same direction as this light. It's the same direction that this path goes. And as you carefully and quietly and quickly move your way through the forest towards this light, you see another creature you're sure you have never seen before. There is no campfire here. There is no light source of any kind here. The light is the creature. And you see, again, back away from you, but sitting tall, a fox. But not a small fox. You see a good 8 foot tall from ass to ears, a fox sat, its tail sort of coiled around its right side, its back straight, its front paws forward, and you see a dozen small, normal-sized foxes, sort of running and jumping and rolling over each other and nipping at ears and playing. These were the creatures that were following you in the forest. They sort of play. One breaks off, dips its head down to the stream, casually takes a sip, runs back, plays, tackles, etc. You see there are fireflies flying above this area in this small clearing, just sort of blinking in and out of existence. And you see this fox, this glowing golden light fox, just sort of turn its head, and you see one of its eyes rotates towards you. And it sort of tips its head almost as if in acknowledgement.
Seydlitz lowers his crossbow.
The fox turns away, and you see it dip forward and take a sip from the stream.
I think Seydlitz will walk up, keep a little bit of a distance up to the stream, and sit down and take a break.
Okay. Your wolf pup falls into place at your side, and as you sort of sit, it scooches in and sits there with you for a second, and you can see that it is like craning its head around in both directions, watching the foxes, the kits, move back and forth, playing with each other. And you can tell that this puppy that you have with you would love nothing more than to join in.
Seydlitz nods at it as if, go on, little one.
It
Don't cause trouble.
immediately scampers up over you and crosses your lap and joins in. And you can hear this chittering laughter of the foxes mixed with like of the dog. of this wolf pup. As you see it tackle one of the foxes, 2 more of the foxes tackle the wolf pup. They're pulling at each other's ears, they're nipping at tails, and there is children at play, essentially. The fox towering over you just sort of turns its head in a slow, poised sort of way and just looks down at you. And you are met with what is a giant fox. This is a massive fox. The light glows, this orange gold firelight glow just sort of comes off this thing. And you can feel it staring at you. And as you look, you can just see these 2 black-brown eyes just sort of boring into you. What do you do?
Seydlitz is going to stand up, like crossbow slung on his right arm down, and he's gonna see if he's gonna like slowly reach out his hand towards the big fox.
It lowers its head so that its
He's
nose
going
is right where your hand is.
to pat it like just up between the ears.
It continues to lower so you can give it like a scritch on the head. The fox sort of leans in to accept pets, and then it kind of like almost headbutts you, right? In that way that small animals kind of do, or big animals that think they're small animals. It sort of butts you, and it's enough to like toss you like to the side a little bit. This is a rather large animal. It butts you to the side, and then you see it sort of point its face towards the stream, and it like looks at you, and it dips its head down and begins to lap up some of this stream.
You know, if I weren't out here, I would never see things like this.
It's true. Its right eye is still staring at you as it curls its tongue in the water, pulls some water into its mouth. And as it drinks its fill, it turns back to you and takes one last look at you. And you see it stand to its full height. As this thing stands on all fours, its back is easily above your head. It takes a look at you, turns around to move in the opposite direction. If you had come the direction you came from, this thing moves towards the east, towards the direction of the bear. And you see it stand. It looks over its shoulder at you, and sort of lets out the same kind of laugh as the other foxes, but it's far louder. But you would expect it to be this booming, commanding sort of laugh, right? That sort of the noise foxes make, that sort of almost like scream laugh. But it's not. It's very soft. It's almost musical in the way that it comes out. It's not this commanding sound. It's just louder. And the other animals, your wolf included, all sort of echo this sort of noise. Your wolf howls a tiny wolf howl, and this great giant fox begins to turn its head back in the direction it's walking. The other baby foxes, these kits, all begin to scamper towards it. And the same way they were playing in this clearing, the same way they must have been playing around you as you were walking, they are running back and forth between the legs and feet of this great fox. And it turns away from you and begins to walk into the forest. And you see that its tail unfurls into 9 smaller tails that sort of fan out like flames as this thing slowly walks into the forest, leaving you alone. As it walks away, the glow recedes, and you are alone in a stream. Fireflies dance above, providing the only light you have. Again, alone with your thoughts. Seydlitz, what are you doing? What are you thinking, feeling? What are your concerns?
In Seydlitz's mind, an image of his home kind of pops through, and it's just you kind of see an instant of like the scene of the dinner table with everybody around it, the kids running around when Seydlitz was younger, the kids running around, his mother and father still there. And it's kind of like a hall blended in of like various eras and ages, basically throughout the years, all blended into one big scene. He's just taking comfort in that image and wondering what he should do now. Because he doesn't, obviously, he's a hunter, but he isn't going to hunt that. He doesn't want to hunt that.
You sit there and you know you have more than enough food to feed your family. You know that if you head back towards the outskirts of the forest, that you could find more of the same kind of game that you had previously found. That lizard, the ostrich creature, the deer. There's plenty for you there. But the deeper places of the forests are usually the ones that people don't go to. There's reasons why there are rumors of the deep forest. There's reasons why people are afraid when the forest gets too thick. There's reasons why there are stories and tales and fables of the things that live in a deep, dark forest, whether they're for good or for ill. And though you have never encountered creatures like those that you have encountered today, you've heard stories of things like that. But until this moment, that's all they've been. They've been stories. Much like the stories you heard of the world before you were born. The stories before the world was called the Afterworld. Before Elanehtar fell. Stories of days when there was no question that there were gods, because the gods walked among us. But now, that's all they are. Or at least that's all you thought they were. Stories. Gods had died. This is the world now. They're not coming back. But just like the creatures of old, the creatures of story and tale, perhaps they are. And perhaps it starts with you. Perhaps it starts with your companions. Perhaps it starts with your niece. Perhaps it is you all that usher in this age of divinity, this age of magic, this age of wonder. Perhaps it is you all who are the redeemers of the Afterworld.
In Seydlitz's mind, the image of what he just witnessed plus another thing overlaps. His father showing him how to use his crossbow for the first time. And he looks at the little wolf pup, reaches down to pick it up, and with a little smirk of a smile, let's go home. He says, let's go home, little one. We'll come back tomorrow.
You leave this section of the forest intrinsically knowing where to go. Once you've traveled a path, you know exactly how to get back on this path. And soon the darkness of Nod and the canopy are behind you, and you travel back into the daylight. And there is a sense of time passed, although it's strange. You can see that the sun has moved in the sky and that you know that hours have passed. But for some reason, as you get back out into the warmth of the sun, there are a handful of birds pecking at your catches. They do look a little bit more drained of fluid than they were when you left them, which makes sense for hours, but they do seem a bit more drained than you would have imagined in the passage of time that you can recall. And you feel like, though it seemed like hours for you, It may have been days. You don't feel tired, you don't feel hungry, but something about coming back into the light, you feel like you've been gone a lot longer. And you feel something else in this city, or sorry, in this forest. Something you didn't feel when encountering that giant ursine creature, something you didn't feel when you encountered that giant fox. You feel fear, but it's not your own. The forest is afraid. You can sense it in the creatures, you can sense it in the air, you can sense it in the stillness. You knew when you met the bear that you were not the only hunter in the forest. But you know intrinsically right now, you are not the only person in the forest. You are not alone here. What do you do?
Do I get a vague sense on the direction of where this feeling is coming from?
South, southeast, and southwest.
Looks like our work's never done. And he stakes off south.
You head due south from where you are. Southeast is the direction of that dark spot you were just in. South is also darkness because you'll be heading back towards the direction of Nod here. You quickly... Are you moving with speed?
Relative
Okay.
speed.
You move through
Try
the
not to
undergrowth.
make up too much a ruckus, though.
Perfect. You know what? Roll me a stealth, difficulty 5.
Trained in that, so I'm gonna put this one. I think. Okay, there it is.
Perfect. You move through this as quietly and as quickly as you possibly can, heading back under the cover of Nod in this direction where you feel this trepidation coming from with the forest. And you hear it. You hear the snapping of twigs, the bending of branches, the breaking of trees, the moving of rocks. There is a loud, almost thundering presence here in the forest. Everything else moved with the forest. Everything else flowed with its general existence the same way you did when on the hunt. You move the way the animals move, but whatever this is not. It's moving against the grain. It's moving against the current of the forest here. And you begin to see blue lights, 2 at a time, boop, 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 moving. Their eyes in sunken skulls. And you see the skulls and the faces and the hair and the armor. You see boots crunching and scraping and kicking and dragging. You hear the armor moving in place. Everything about this seems manufactured. And this is, I think, the first time you've seen a resident of Chryserich. The people who have been reborn, as they may call it. Those who have had their humanity stripped away and are essentially a sentient and sapient undead, moving in a horde towards you, through the forest, taking no mind for its currents, its ways, its energy, and just moving straight through this thing as if it is just an obstacle to pass through or over or under. And you see that little trail of blue pinpricks and that sound of crunching flowing like a river down the mountain into this forest and in the direction of Samora. You are in this moment the first line of defense against a war. What do you do?
In this lineup, do I see anyone that looks like they stand out?
Roll me
Like an officer type?
yeah, go ahead and roll me a tracking, let's say. Yeah, let's do a tracking roll. Difficulty is going to be a 4.
Tracking. Like the following ID tracks, I guess.
Yeah.
Alright.
Or identifying and assessing
4.
danger. Actually, both those will apply. So you can use both of those.
Difficulty 4, 3. Alright. Oh wow.
Do you want to spend XP?
I think it should be more interesting if I don't.
Okay. You stand there, sort of taking this scene in, right? You just saw this giant ursine creature. You just saw this giant fox. You've seen a lot of strange things in this forest, and this obviously does not belong here. But it is still equally as impressive. These are a force of arguably men and women that you have never seen before, moving en masse towards the city. You knew a war was coming. You knew who it was with. But this is the first time you are seeing a troop movement of this kind. And you do notice that there is an officer. They are astride a giant bipedal lizard, almost raptor-esque. You see it has barding on it, and you see it has a almost like a lizard-like helmet with a frond of feathers sort of peeled back. You see that the man astride this thing has long white hair sort of pulled back into a ponytail. Its eyes dart back and forth in its armor, and you recognize this person as a captain, both because of how it stands above the crowd, but you also recognize it as it points directly towards you. And it says, "Kill it! No witnesses!" And you see a dozen or so eyes turn towards you. That's your GM intrusion. What are you doing?
I'm going to shoot the officer right now.
Okay. Fantastic. Describe to me what happens when you pulled the trigger on your crossbow.
Letting all the divinity and ideas of how Seydlitz is finally coming to accept the idea of divine in his head. And the fact that he is the first one here and this is his forest for what he can consider. The bolt seems a bit odd when it looses, as if light culminates on it right as it goes off the crossbow. And it takes the form of a wolf and a fox, both running in stride. And they run at this officer and hit him, and it's as if both creatures bite him at the same time.
Outstanding. You see this arrow bound over itself, this almost like swimming course of waves crashing. This wolf fox, as it collides with the chest and neck area of this officer. As you said, biting it, and you hear a loud Wilhelm scream, "Yeah!" as the officer is bounded off of its mount. The raptor thing rears up as it squeals backwards, rearing its two smaller front arms. The officer kilters off to the side, and those troops who had looked at you and were about to attack all immediately turn back to see what just happened to their officer. The forest is a new level of tense. There are far too many people here for you to take on yourself and survive, Seydlitz, but as the camera lingers on this moment of these troops not being sure what to do as their commander is down, a last order having been given to kill you, what do we see Seydlitz look like? And what do we see Seydlitz do?
Seydlitz would be standing there, and he'd start to turn to leave, but it looks as if there's a glow about him above his head, and his nimbus is glowing large. And on that nimbus, you see a full moon with a black wolf with red eyes, and a fox standing on top of that moon with its tails billowing. And you hear this, and you seem to hear this like wolves howl in your mind.
Love that. We cut back to the library in Samora as Korax is mid-lesson with Arua, discussing the merits of thinking outside the box as he uses all of his garnered intellect, his learned speech, to figure out how to teach defense without teaching violence. And a headache strikes you in the back of the head as if something is being written across your mind. An all too familiar feeling at this point. You are gaining new knowledge. Knowledge is forcing its way into the wrinkles of your mind, and you know that somewhere in the world, the god of the hunt has ascended. And that is where we end this episode of The Rise. Episode 27, The Felling. So, let's go around, do our introductions, and we're going to get the hell out of here, do our after show, which you guys can get exclusively over on our Patreon at the $5 tier. You can get access to this after show and all of the after shows we've done since like 2020, mid-2020, are all available there for you. So if you ever wanted to see the thoughts behind the scenes of characters in the actual plays that you guys love, that's the best way to do it. Let's start with the man of the hour. Matt, who are you? Where can we find you on the internet? What are you up to?
I'm Matt Ordy. You'll find me on Mike's Discord and here in the Patreon campaign and the one-shots, but basically nowhere else.
Perfect. G, you're up next. Great job not crying today.
I'm not crying today. I'm G, your friendly neighborhood lightning invoker. You can find me in the Discord. You can find me on all things Patreon, on modding during the week when we have our regular streams, and next week for the Patreon one-shots, and on Twitter.
Perfect. Chris, you're next. Great job not poisoning that child. Who are you? Where can we find you on the internet, and what are you up to?
Hi, I'm Chris, aka Necro, whatever. Yeah, poisoning children everywhere. You can find me in the Discord, not corrupting children. It's great.
Perfect. And last but not least, Norm, I'm sorry that I gave you more responsibility, but who are you, where can we find you, and what are you up to?
I'm Normal Snow. You can find me in the Patreon campaign and in the Discord.
Perfect. That's it from us. We will see you next month for The Rise. Episode 28 is called, hold on, I have this. It's here somewhere. It's called something. A Time to Reconcile. A Time to Reconcile, I believe is what it's called. And if you haven't caught the gist here, last episode was Mina's story. This episode was Seydlitz's story, which means next episode is Xantari's story. So ponder what that could mean to you. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought about this episode and what you think is going to happen next episode with that title and that character. But that's it from us. We'll see you guys next time. For all of us, you guys, bye-bye.
Bye.